Hey everyone, good evening. On behalf of Tamil Association of Colorado, I welcome you all to today's session on College Prep. This session couldn't have come at a better time as our high school students are wrapping up their summer holidays and back to school is just right around the corner. Today's session is going to be presented by Mary Perry and Mary Colvin Schlack from Discover Pathways. A slight introduction about both of them. Mary Perry attended the University of Wisconsin at Madison and received a BA in Business Administration. She has a college counseling certificate from UCLA, and she's an active member of several professional organizations. From 2010, she's been involved in the college admissions process through leading the post-grad center at Monarch High School. She was also involved in the successful internship and career forum programs at Zurich International School in Switzerland. Mary Kolbenschlag graduated from New Mexico State University and has a college counseling certificate from UCLA as well. She is an active member of several professional organizations also. She was the North America leader for quality services in Watson. She left the career to pursue her passion to work with the young adults as they transition from high school to college and from college into the work world. So, Mary and Mary, hearty welcome to both of you.
Thank
A
you.
couple
Thank
of
you.
quick items to our participants before we get started with our presentation today. Q&A will be at the end after the presentation. So during the Q&A segment, participants, if you have any questions, you can choose to raise your hand or type your questions. We will address them as they come along. So having said that, I'm going to turn this over to Mary and Mary. So Mary and Mary, it's all yours now. Take it away with your presentation.
Okay, I'm going to start. It's Mary Kopenschlag, and I will share my screen with you, and I'll take you through the first set of slides that we have, and then Mary Perry will take over. Let me go ahead and share. Okay, so can everybody see the slides? Let me make sure to get back to, hold on, let me stop sharing and let me get the right slides. Okay, slideshow. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we don't need that slide. Okay, so who is Discover Pathways? I think you guys should understand a little bit about who we are and why we started. Mary and I have actually been longtime friends in the community of Superior, Colorado. Mary was over at the Postgrad Center at Monarch High. My boys went there too. I, at the time, was at IBM. And frankly, I thought a lot of the college process was going to be done for me as a mom. You know, I'm in my career and I just didn't realize how complicated it could be and how many steps were involved. And so when I decided to leave and do something different, Mary and I talked and we just thought this would be a great connection, because between my career and background and her career and background, we thought, you know, there's a lot of families that could use this type of support. And we're so happy to present to you guys because we feel like there's really not enough support out there between the high school counselors and the community. So anything we can do to perpetuate useful information for you guys, that's really what we're about. So we're not only a college counseling company, we also focus on careers because we know that not every student is college bound, right? There's a lot of students that want to go into a trade, go into military, take internships, take a gap year. And so we realize that we need to offer other things other than just college counseling. So that's why you see it's from 14 to 26, because that's about the age range where young adults are starting to understand who they are, what their strengths are, and then how does that fit in preparing for a career. And oftentimes when they get into college or even after college, they're still not quite there. And we believe that if we can launch them, then they have a much better chance for success in growing their careers if they can get that initial support at the beginning. So as you can tell, careers are foundation of our process. And what we mean by that is we struggle with understanding, how do you choose a college or a degree if you really don't know what your own strengths are? So discovering that about yourself is pivotal and foundational for us. So even if a student comes in and says, hey, I think I know what I want to be, we're like, let's do some discovery about who you are. Of course, we do support the whole college process, from the selection to the application, every little detail, including the strategy of, where should you apply first and all of that. And then again, we do support alternate paths. So what we know now is that college is too expensive to approach it in a haphazard way. I know when I was going to college, you could take a semester to figure some things out, maybe hop from major to major, but now we know that the average cost to change a major is $45,000, and that 70% of our students change majors at least once. So Mary and I believe that your budget and the cost of what you're going to pay needs to be taken into consideration with all of the choices with the colleges nowadays. Lastly, we believe in giving back. So we have a 501c3, and we support those kids and families that just cannot afford the services, and make sure that they have equal access to the type of information that we have to offer. So where do we begin? Really, the college process is a three-part process. We start with the careers, so your discovery phase. From there, I'll go through it. We go to the college match, which is selecting the right college if you're college bound. And then lastly, it's the mechanics of getting into college. So we choose to use technology, of course, because it's unbiased. And there is a great assessment out there that we've been using that looks at the students' cognitive strengths, so their aptitudes. What are the things that their brain is in the zone with? So it uses little brain teasers. So unlike other assessments where you, like a strengths finder or a Myers-Briggs, where you say, I'm strong in this, or I'm an extrovert, this is actually little brain teasers or brain games. And so it tests where their strengths are and where the things are that they don't do as well. It also looks a little bit at their behaviors, their interests, so the things that bring them joy. Because the one thing we know about this age group, you guys, is that if they're not interested in their careers, they will change to another career and then another career. So we want to get them in the zone of not only what their brain likes to do, but also what they're interested in. And sometimes those two aren't exactly the same. We look at things like their values, and we perform a bunch of other surveys. Just the more we can give them about knowing themselves, the more that they will benefit. When they're done with this assessment, it matches with the Department of Labor. So they've been collecting all this data since the 50s of what makes up certain job profiles or job families. So whether you're a plumber or a doctor, each of those careers has a job profile. And what it does is this assessment uses an algorithm, and it profiles the student as they take it, and then it matches them, and it presents the highest matches to them of the careers of the people that think like them, behave like them, and like to do the same things they do. So it's going to give them a lot more things that they probably never thought about or even understand what that career is based on. And then what we do is they go through that material, and then they decide the careers that best connect themselves to it. And we connect them with professionals. So then they're starting to build this professional network. So we have a bunch of professionals that basically have volunteered to support our students and have either shadowing experiences, talk to them over Zoom, just give them information. And then what's beautiful about it is that they will end up a lot of times creating a connection with these students and provide a letter of reference or provide them with an internship later on. So we know that it helps launch these students beyond what we're doing with them. And then we look at industry trends and guides, as far as Is this a budding or blossoming career, or is this a dying career? And we all know there's a lot of careers out there that are still yet to be invented, right? But usually we can look at it and go, okay, if they're in, let's say, technology and medical, then let's look at the biomedical area. And we know there's a lot of growth in that area. So then once we've passed the discovery phase, then for those students that are college bound, we move into what we call our college match process. And what we do here is our goal is really to understand what the student and the families are looking for, what they value, and frankly, what they can afford. And we create what we call a best fit college list. And so we utilize all these surveys and assessments. And then it's very budget focused for us because we don't want you to pay more than what you should be paying for the result you're looking for. And we feel there's strong components for this list, right? There's obviously the financials, the students' learning styles. So do they like a big school or a small school? You know, what is it, more of a rigorous type of academic, or is it more of a participative and an internship based? So we really look at how the students learn. If we can get them to a degree and major, of course, that's the best result. And, or if at least into a college within the university that we think they have, you know, the best chance of thriving in. The college rigor is something that we match them with, which is we want to make sure that they go to a college where they can actually perform. And so does the college, right? They want to make sure that there's a match there. And then we look at things like, where do you want to be? Because some students, geography is important, like they don't want snow anymore and that type of thing. And then what types of activities should they be involved with? And what kind of activities do they want to see at the school? So those are some of the many, many things that we look at when we put the college match together. And you can only imagine, as we progress with the students, they fine tune it and they'll say, oh, I used to think geography is important, but now I'm really focusing more on my major. And so then we can hone that. And then lastly, there's the application process. So we've gone through discovery, we've found the schools that match them. And then now we're in, and Mary and I right now are in the trenches with our seniors because we like to use the summer before our senior fall semester to get a lot of this stuff taken care of, because we know their senior year is busy, right? And so we want to try to allow them to have time to enjoy some of their senior year too. And so the components of a strong application is what kind of high school rigor did they take? Did they take AP classes if they were offered? Did they take IB? Did they take regular classes? And so we've matched them to the colleges that fit that. So we look at the rigor. So how hard of classes did they take and the types of classes, their GPA. And then of course, there's this whole SAT, ACT, some schools, and Mary's going to talk more about this in detail, are test optional or test blind, meaning they won't look at it. And so where do you sit with that? And we get a lot of questions about that. We want to make sure that they have a healthy activities list. So are they in sports? Are they in clubs? Are they in honors groups? Do they do hobbies? And we want to make sure that they can show themselves the best they can to the admissions reps. And then we want to make sure that the colleges know who they are as a person. Are they kind? Are they funny? Are they competitive? And so their personal essays and their supplements should really fit their values of who they are, so that when they walk in the room, you would know them as a person and a human being, not a test score or a GPA. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the next section, and then Mary's going to take it from here. And Mary, I'll just progress as you tell me.
That's great. Thanks, Mary. Hello, everybody. I'm Mary Perry, the other Mary. So COVID has really changed the college process. And, Mary and I, as we reflect back on these past few years, we've really seen some changes in 3 specific areas. So those are the things that I'm going to be talking about. The changes in admissions, the standardized testing, which actually I think Mary and I, we feel that's going to be a lot of questions tonight about standardized testing, the college campus visits and how those have changed, and actually we think changed for the better. but certainly these changes have come because of COVID. Mary, you can go ahead to the next one. So changes in admission. So I don't know if this is going to shock you guys or not, but changes in admissions, they've changed in two ways. First of all, the more selective schools have actually become even more selective. So this is kind of a combination of schools going test optional. When it's optional, many students can now apply. There's no barrier. That's creating more applications, which actually drives down the percentage of the students that are actually being accepted. It's a little crazy, right? Because we thought test optional, that's going to help everybody, but actually for selective schools, it's actually made it even more difficult. So it really has had the reverse effect. However, schools like CU and University of Arizona, these are schools that are super affordable and they have great programs that every student can really take advantage of. They have engineering, they have business, they have strong sciences. So that's the great news. Affordable schools that are excellent. We think CU and University of Arizona have excellent academics are actually still in the wheelhouse. I do want to throw one thing out. You know, Mary and I have a lot of students interested in Boston. So Harvard, 5% acceptance rate. Now that's very, very low, but one of the schools our students really love to apply to, Boston University, it's now down to 20% acceptance. It used to be way more accessible. So there's a lot of changes in admissions and a lot of that correlates to the testing piece. So Mira, we can go to the next slide. Standardized testing. Okay. So I do think we're going to get a lot of questions about this. So just to really kind of set the record straight. So test optional just means a student has the option to not submit a test score. That's really all it is. Test blind means if your student ends up submitting a test score, that school will not look at it. It won't even be open. It'll be in a closed document. It won't matter at all. So what does that mean for students? Mary and I were very aligned on this. We feel that students, if they're able to study for an ACT or SAT, take a test and get within that 50 percentile for that particular university, they should submit that test. And it really is helpful. It's just one more data point. We understand sometimes students do not test well, and that's okay. That's where they take advantage of test optional. But if they're doing well and if they're like, oh, I don't have a 1600, doesn't have to be a 1600, which is like that's a perfect score for SAT. It should just be in that 50th percentile of students that were accepted last year. And that's easy to look up. So you'll know whether to submit or not. Test optional and test blind, they're always changing. There's a really slick website called fairtest.org. Go to that and you can really see if your students really decide, okay, I think I'm going to apply test optional, really all the updated information is there. Or for a specific school, you can go right to their website. They always have it on there and it's updated every August 1st. So all the accurate information should be on there now. Okay. College campus visits. Honestly, I think, Mary and I think this has really been the best change with COVID. So just to let you all know, getting to know your admissions rep, your student reaching out to the admissions rep, either when you're on campus or if you're just reaching out via email, is probably one of the most important things that student can do for their application. That admission rep is actually the person that reads the student's application first. So creating a relationship with them, asking them questions to show demonstrated interest is absolutely crucial, especially in selective schools. So the question is, how do I find my admission rep, right? That's always the question. So just go onto the university website, you type in, it's really simple, find my admission rep, and you put your state behind it. Because usually, for out-of-state schools, it's based on state. That's it. They come up, you get to see the person's face usually. You also get to see other information. And here's the best part. It used to be you had to go to a campus, and actually have a sit-down meeting with the admissions rep. Now the admissions reps are super open to, of course, email, but Zoom conferences and also phone calls. And that's the same thing. If you have a student that's interested in engineering, absolutely reach out to the Department of Engineering at that school and say, hey, my student can't visit the campus, but they really want to talk to somebody about mechanical engineering and maybe their maker spaces and what kind of classes they have. And this is another way to show demonstrated interest and really get the information that student needs. You really don't have to spend thousands of dollars flying to a school, renting a car, going to a hotel to do these virtual tours, when there's actually virtual tours as well as virtual information sessions available. So we think this has been a huge change. We have so many students that are like, I'm not sure, I think I want to apply to this school, but I can't spend $2,500 to go there and visit. They can do these virtual tours and talk to their admissions rep, gather information very effectively and very cost effectively as well. So one of the things that Mary and I came up with as well when COVID hit is how else can we give our families exposure to these colleges if they can't get on campus or if they go to campus and there's no actual tours. So we have something called College Connectors. College Connectors are our actual students that we've worked with over the years, and they're either in college or they've already graduated. And we have students, for example, we had a student during COVID that was interested in Gonzaga, and we connected them with that student who lived on campus. That family actually went to Gonzaga and visited. Our student took them around. Another example is we had a student at Stanford, just graduated, and Stanford was completely closed. So nobody was on campus, but students want to know what's life like on campus? What's the rigor? What can I take advantage of? And he was absolutely open to those conversations. So we find our families as well as our students are just huge resources for us that help us continue to grow our business and really help our students. The last little bit is Induct, Niche, and Campus Real. If you guys have not heard of those really came out during COVID to give access to families to really understand what's campus life like, to really get more data. So definitely use those as a resource. Okay, Mary, I'll do the next. Okay, so what has changed? So ultimately, when you really look at it, nothing's really changed. The selective schools are still selective. Everyone's really should still be taking their testing, right? It just depends on whether you should submit or not. And finally, the campus visits, you can still go on campus and visit. However, now you can actually not visit, save some money, and know whether or not this is a school you might want to apply to, which we think is just phenomenal. So what hasn't changed is when you're talking to your student and you're like, how am I going to know my student's going to really navigate this process successfully? You ask them, are you going to be engaged? When you look at colleges, are you going to research this major? Are you going to ask questions? Are you going to reach out to the admissions officer? Because Mary and I, we can provide all that information, but ultimately that student has to do the work and be proactive. That's really the most important thing. And I think our students, they really get a lot out of this process. They really understand they're driving the train. So when they get those acceptances, they feel really great. They feel really proud, and they should, because they work really hard. All right, and then I'll do the next one. And that's basically, that's our whole spiel, our about the college process, about COVID, how that's changed things. And I know Mary did say we have a foundation. We feel really proud of that because we're able to help not only local philanthropies like Access Opportunity, which I'm assuming a lot of you actually have heard of, but also like Ames Community College. Those are students that are in college that are first generation, helping them to figure out their direction as well. And again, if you guys ever need any assistance or just have questions, just reach out to us. That's our website and our phone number, and we'd be excited to hear from you.
I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, so we'd love to open it up to questions, because what we find is that one question leads to another question, which leads to a deeper dive on another. So we are here to field your questions. And if we don't know the answer, we will commit to finding it out for you and getting it back to you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the presentation, Mary and Mary. I think we've got the first question on our chat. So the first question is, which test is recommended, right? Is it SAT or ACT or both? What should we do here?
Mary, do you want me to? Okay,
yeah, go ahead and take it.
All right. So SAT and ACT are both, they're different. And actually, Kuth, if people are interested, Mary and I would be happy to, we have a really great document that talks about the difference between the two. But ultimately, when we actually do this career assessment, we really get to know the student, and we find out about visual speed. And that's really important in the ACT. ACT is very fast paced, more questions. The verbal and the math skills are actually not as high a level as the SAT. So if your student's fast and they actually, and they have great math skills, but they don't have to be crazy math skills, and their reading's decently fast, they will do very well on the ACT. Mm-hmm. SAT is designed for students that they have a really good vocabulary, they're pretty well read, and they have extremely strong math skills. So because it really digs very deep in the SAT. But one of the things Mary and I recommend, so there's a local company called Mindfish. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they actually offer something really slick. You basically, for $150, you can actually get your student assessed as to whether the ACT or the SAT will be better. And then these beautiful students only have to focus on one test, because focusing on both is not necessary. You only have to take one. ACT, SAT, all selective schools take them. You just pick the one that's best for your student, and again, cater to your student's strengths.
So there's a follow-up question to that as well. Does it matter which one is taken for college admission? Meaning, does a rigorous school look for SAT rather than the ACT, or does any college look for specifically SAT or ACT?
No, actually, it used to be years ago, Kuth, that was the fact. But now every single school, no matter the selectivity, they accept ACT or SAT. So we say students take advantage of the best learning environment for you, where you're going to get the best score.
Okay, perfect. So sorry, there's another follow-up question on ACT and SAT. So how many times students are recommended to take the SAT and ACT to improve their score? And should they start in junior year? Is that the correct time frame? And maybe you can also a little bit talk about the super scoring methodology here.
Okay, let me write all that down. So how many times? Then the other one was when do you start to take, and then the last one was super score.
What's a super scoring?
Okay, got it. All right. So obviously it depends on the student for how many times you would take the test, but here is the rule of thumb. Hopefully the student will have studied and have done their best work on the first SAT and ACT. They should look at the schools that they're applying to, because that's going to give them the answer. If they're applying to CU, there's obviously a different, I think 1270, Mary? Is that what it is for SAT? Yeah. For CU? And you guys can look up all this data on the website too for each of the schools. But look at what the average test score is. If you're in that average range for like a CU, University of Arizona, you're good to go, because they're just looking at that piece of data. So I would consider those are more target schools. Selective schools, that's where you want to probably, well, when you look at that mid 50%, of course, it's going to be very high, usually in the 1500s, right? So, and if you're thinking engineering, you want to make sure that math component is very strong. So there's a couple ways. It's either overall, is that above the 50%? Are you in the higher part of that? If so, you're good to go. But if you're not, if you're in the mid-range, you may consider taking it again, or if that math score, if you're doing engineering, is because they pick up the two components, you may want to take it again. Again, those are questions. If families have, Mary and I are always happy to answer those. They're very tricky, right? But it's very school dependent. Does that make sense?
Yes, it definitely does. Yeah.
And
Let's. Yeah,
do you want me to, so when to start?
Yeah.
If a student, because there's a trigonometry in the ACT and SAT, you want to make sure you've gotten through your pre-calc class, which at certain high schools, Monarch High School, if you have students that are going there, they actually teach trigonometry first semester. Other schools like Fairview, they're teaching trigonometry second semester. So students might have to learn, if they're going to take, let's say, an ACT or an SAT in the fall of junior year, they need to know if they've had that trigonometry. Otherwise, they will miss a few of those questions. They can get on Khan Academy as well and practice the SAT, those couple trigonometry questions, only like 3 or 4, or ACT Crack to practice those for ACT for the trigonometry. So that's the big factor. Senior year, they're ready to go. But remember, the more advanced you are in math, the more you have to kind of get the dusties off, right? Because you'll be like, oh, I did this math in 8th grade. So that sometimes, so there's a lot. So you get practice and get the
You got to
cobwebs
remember
off.
a lot of stuffs.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. They go back in time. They're like, I think I was in 7th grade when they did this. So junior year is great. We think spring of junior is a really great time. Really great time. Unless, and it depends on sports, right? It's all that's, what do you have going on your junior year that you can actually prep for? Super score, as you guys all probably know, not every single school super scores. But it's very advantageous, especially if you have a high math score in one and a high English one in the other one, and you combine them. And to look up what school super score, it's literally as easy as Google. Does Stanford super score? Does MIT super score? And it comes up immediately. And they don't change much year to year. So those are good questions.
So there's no any specific website that shows each school's SAT and ACT admission scores. It's just, we'll just Google it, right?
That's
okay, because that was one of the questions asked.
Mary, have you ever seen a website? I haven't either. And I think it's because people will be like, well, this website said this, but it wasn't actually true. They didn't update. And then a student ends up not taking it again because they thought they had it in the bag with the super score. So always check. I think it's always important to check the website and just verify.
I will add to what Mary just said. CU, for instance, if you go to the bottom of the admissions, it'll have the overall university's SAT, ACT mid score. It'll have the lead school of business, which is up a little. It'll have the engineering, which is up a little. So a lot of times for these schools that have direct admit programs where the student goes in and says, I want and need to be in engineering, right? It makes them declare. They will have more rigorous scores as the average. And so, a nursing program, for example. So you really have to drill down. That's why getting your college list is so important, because then you can drill down on majors, drill down on test scores, drill down on the classes. Because sometimes you go to a school based on these subtleties Mary was talking about. The maker space for engineering, who has more labs, like Cal Poly has a ridiculous amount of labs that, for research, especially given the size of the school. So it's important to understand too about testing is there is something called test fatigue. So as Mary said, you want to study and you want to do the best you can, but this thing of what we call bowling for dollars, where you just keep taking the test over and over, just becomes so fatiguing for the student and the families. So truly just try to do your best. And then we call it one and done. Take it once, be done.
Okay. Thank you. That was a good answer. So another related question is, does a high score compensate other parameters? Right. I got like 1,500. I just aced it. And does it, really impact other parameters? Like maybe I may have got a lower GPA at my school. So how does it compensate is the question.
So I missed the beginning of that question because I don't know, I think it froze a little bit. Can you?
Okay.
You know what?
So
I
does
can
a,
take it.
Okay,
I can
great.
take it, Coop.
okay.
So absolutely. So especially for a school that is test optional, the question was, does a high SAT or ACT compensate for other factors in the application? And so, right, it does. The
Yes.
application is a holistic process, but yet there are, if you look at, what is the ranking for looking at the different facets of the application process, Rigor would be your highest one, GPA, SAT, ACT, and if you don't submit your SAT, ACT, of course, they don't hold it against you, but we all understand that if you do, all things being equal, it's going to help you if you score well. So it can fill in gaps in academics where it can help the admissions rep go, okay, there's a C here in math, but yet they ace the math portion. So they obviously
Yes.
understand the foundation of the math. So yes. And I
Okay.
will add too, where there are schools that compensate through merit scholarships, meaning if you're a good student and you've gotten high scores and they take that into consideration, then it gives you money, right? And so there is, we call it, the green zone, when you're in the above that 50th percentile into the top 10, 20% of the scores, you are more apt to get more money from the school for being a great student. And we call it merit aid.
Okay. Are there any other parameters outside of rigor, GPA, and test scores? What other criteria colleges consider to evaluate students for admission?
Mary, you want to take that? Because you talked
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so some of the other things they look at is obviously your extracurriculars. So what types of things have they been involved with? And I'll just talk briefly about that. They look for breadth and depth, right? They want to know that you have a lot of different activities. So you could be involved in sports, in academics, in clubs, in philanthropies, in work, right? So a lot of different types of things. And then they also want to see that you're deep in some activities. So you've been doing them for a lot of years and you've grown in your leadership, you've grown in your results, you've grown in your impact. And then that shows that you will do the same in college. So activities, what they call extracurriculars, are important. Some schools show demonstrated interest. So did you visit the school? Did you reach out to the rep? Did you look at our website, right? Other schools don't track demonstrated interest. I'm trying to think, what else is there, Mary, that I can't think of anything else that.
Well, yeah, I think
other than what we've mentioned.
I think one of the really crucial things is if a student, let's say, is thinking of going into science, showing that they're actually doing something not only within school, like the SRS, which is a scientific research seminar, but they're also trying to get research outside of school. If they're doing engineering, they've shadowed somebody in engineering, just showing that they actually have some knowledge of engineering in general, taking engineering classes, of course, like at Centaurus. Not all schools have those programs, but showing that you have this interest in what you're going to major in, especially for the California State and University of California. They really like to see that because you have to pick your major when you apply.
Right.
Okay. So how much weightage is given to extracurricular activities, right? Are they equally weighted like GPA or the rigor of the courses that you take?
No, let's be honest, colleges and universities are there to educate our youth, and they have a level of rigor themselves, right? And then each of their departments or colleges have a level of rigor. And so what they look for is, will this student succeed from a rigor standpoint. So they're looking for all those key indicators. Did they take the right classes? Did they take the right level of classes? And then did they achieve the scores they needed to for those classes? Everything else just helps them differentiate one student over another so that they do have a well-balanced class. Your smaller colleges are going to look for certain things to make up a class because they want to have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But for the most part, I mean, they're academic institutions and that's what they're looking for.
Okay. And I can't resist asking this question, but do colleges consider the rigor of the courses taken in senior year? Because, sometimes the transcript that you get submitted is like November 1st deadline or December 1st deadline. So do they look into the rigor of that senior year semesters?
Yes. So part of the common application and the others is that you put down the classes that you are going to take, and it's you're attesting that these are the classes. Now, there's situations where you could drop a class, but at the end of the day, the counselor, so let's think about this. Right now, this fall, these seniors will be submitting applications, hopefully most of them early action, right? So in the November timeframe, which means the colleges will not be seeing their grades as they're coming in and applying. But what the high school counselors will be sending a mid-year report to these schools. So they're going to be able to see, and then they're also going to be sending an end of year report their senior year. So although it is rare for a school to pull an acceptance from a student, they will if they see that the students have not been truthful and forthright in what they said they were going to take. Because again, it goes back to, can they take the classes in college and be successful? The other is, so a lot of our students are like, oh, I'm going to back off my math and I'm going to take this stats class, or I'm going to have 4 free periods because I don't need. And I'm like, you guys, you need to approach this with the same level of momentum college that you're in high school. So do not back off. We tell them, keep your foot on the gas pedal, take the next level of course, the next level of math, the next level of LA, and AP classes if you can. But don't, I know you want to rest, but at the end of the day, it's not the time.
Okay. So just right after you click that apply button, don't drop off any classes. That's what my takeaway is.
No,
that is, thank you. That was a great way to say it. Do not.
Because I'm going to have to advise my daughter,
Well, we have those hard conversations. See, we have these hard conversations when parents can't, because we see their fall schedule and I'm like, you can't take that math class. Let's go back to.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears here real quick. There's one question. How the COVID has affected the med school admissions in the recent past
medical
years?
school admission? I mean,
medical school admissions.
Well,
specifically, is there any impact due to COVID for those admissions in medical schools?
So Mary and I, that's one thing. We don't focus on medical school applications. What we do focus on is schools that get you to medical school. So that's, so Mary, do you know anything about that?
No, I don't. I mean, the only thing I know as a person in the community is the med programs are growing, right? Just because of all of the recent demand in the US. So we know, there's more nursing programs that are being created. There's one down in Durango now that's starting up this next year, a brand new nursing program, because we do not have enough, nurses. And we have a lot of students that are thinking, I may want to go to med school, or let's say PA school. And we really talk to them seriously about, have you ever thought about nursing? Because nursing in 4 years, you can get out, get a job, you can go on and get your nurse practitioner, you can apply for PA school and usually have a higher acceptance rate into PA school if you've gone the nursing route, because you have to have the rotations. So there are some things where students are like, I didn't know that. Like, I just have been thinking I'll do pre-med. And then once they go to apply to med school, they can't compete as well as nursing when they thought, oh, nursing, I don't want to do that, right? So there's just some little tricks of things that we've been able to change mindsets over some of this old school philosophy.
Okay, thank you. There are a bunch of questions right now on applications. The first question is application deadlines, like early decision or early action, which will be the recommendation, right? Do students have to go for early decision or early action? Your recommendations on those two.
Yeah, so Mira, I'll take this one.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay? It looks
Yeah,
like you're
and if you
frozen.
break up,
Absolutely fine.
Okay,
you're good.
perfect. Just making sure. So we're having this discussion right now, Kuth. This is like the epic discussion. So if a student is absolutely in love with the school and they're like, if I get accepted, I have no doubt that I would go to this school, and their parents are willing to say, no matter what the financial burden is, if I don't get enough money, doesn't matter, we're still all in, then you should apply early decision, because that really gives you a huge advantage. The only way you can get out of early decision is if you can prove to a particular university that you cannot afford going to school there, and they'll ask you to prove it, basically, because you have to sign off on it on the Common App. Not only the student signs off, but they always ask the parent. There's a little, like, I understand that my student is applying early decision. So it usually gives a big advantage when applying. In early action, most of our students actually apply early action, is really what it is. That's not that many students are applying ED unless it's a very selective school that they're just like, this is it. I know 100% that if I get in, I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, and I would love to add that we tell our students, obviously, the earlier you apply, the earlier you're going to hear back, the more money you're going to get, the higher chance you have of getting in. So we make a false deadline in our group to say by Thanksgiving, you're going to have met all your EA dates, and even dates that are rolling where you could apply like the next February. We're still going to have you in before Thanksgiving, because we want you to be done. We want to be done. And we want everybody to just be looking for a good mail to come back to them.
Exactly.
Yeah, the parents will have also a free mindset during the
Yes.
holidays,
Yes.
That's a good answer too. So there's another follow-up question. Is there any limit for the colleges, number of colleges that a student can apply for?
There is not.
30 based on the money.
Yeah, I guess based on application fees, there's no limit. No one says you can only apply to 20, but we recommend, if the student's really done their research and really has done the process properly, they should be applying to 6 to 8 schools, because then we know they can really do a really great job on the supplemental essays, because that's where the proof is in the pudding. That's where they're going to differentiate themselves, because at some point they just start to peter out. They can't do it anymore. And so pick your top 6 to 8 and go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think the students realize just how much work is involved, especially for more selective schools, in writing a good essay. It may only be 250 words, but you better choose those 250 wisely. And if you're applying to a ton of schools, they can start to see where you're copying a lot and you really haven't done your research on why you want to go to this particular school. And so if a college has 2 or more essays each, and you've got 10 schools, you're writing 20 or more essays. So it just gets to be untenable for the students.
Is it even worth applying for a stretch school for a student, right? They may have some safe schools and stretch schools in mind, or even Ivy Leagues, for instance, just apply for it, and, we may get it, we may not get it, things like that. Is it even worthy applying for those stretch schools?
Yeah.
I think it depends on the student, right? I mean, if you I guess, what's the student code? Like, what's their, what are they all about? Are they a good student? Are they just average? Then that might not be worth their time if they're just an average student. But if they're extraordinary, which everybody is that applies, and they have maybe something, a little nugget, you never know, because they're just looking to create, they're picking individuals to create this 1,200 person freshman class. They literally are cherry picking, going, we need Kuth, we need Radha. Those are two individuals that really fit our profile and really going to add to this year's this year's freshman class.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
And you brought up a
Makes
good
sense.
point, Mary, that when we work with students and families, we create what we call a balance list. It's got, a good set of schools that they are safety or likely going to get into. Then there's a few stretch, and then maybe if they want to throw in an Ivy League or wild card or, a UC school that are almost impossible now, we will do it, right? But to Mary's point, those schools take a lot of work. And so if the student's willing to do the work, I mean, we've had students apply to a lot of schools, but we normally can get them down to 6 or 8 schools because it's ones they know they can get in and their parents can afford and they're going to be happy with.
So then how do we come up with a list of school? Is that through Common App, or are there any other tools or websites available for a student to decide what will be the list of my schools?
So I
Nice.
think one website is Niche. It's NICHE. And so you could put in like niche CU, niche, University of Virginia. And I think it does a fabulous job of bringing up a list of what the criteria is to apply, how many students are graduating in certain majors. So if I want to go engineering, I can see how many mechanical engineers graduated from it last year. It gives it an overall rating, like an A+, and then it breaks it down to, ABC for safety, dorms, food, so, we use that a lot. But if you're just looking for, okay, there's 2,500 schools out there, how do I even know? I don't know of any website where you put in criteria and it dumps you out a list of schools.
Mhm.
So Big Future is actually what I would recommend, Mary. 'Cause actually, everybody has. So Big Future is from Naviance, right? So you're going to hear the word Naviance in your household when your student's a
Yes.
senior, and on Naviance. And Mary and I don't use Naviance, the Big Future, only because we have our own platform, which has we call it guided search, which is really, really great. And then Mary and I have our own database that we've been creating over the years, which is has a great search engine as well. That's our technology. But if your student's on Naviance, there's the Big Future on there, and they will ask you what size school, what location, what else, Mary? I can't remember. They ask all this information and they spit out, here are some best fit colleges for you. And it's free.
Degrees. Average scores, test scores. You're right. I completely forgot because we just don't use it.
Right. But all your students, if they're in BVSD specifically in Denver, they all use Naviance.
Yeah.
Okay, so the school will guide the students to use Naviance. Okay. Or no?
No, so they won't. So right now we're working with seniors. No, we'll talk to. Have you ever been in Naviance? And they'll say, I think I did something my freshman year in my English class, and I haven't seen it the rest of my time. And this is how they apply to colleges. That's how they mirror the comp. It's very important. So if they can get on Naviance, they can do Big Future, start getting used to Naviance. Yes. They will use it their senior year for several months. For letters of recommendation, they have to use it for that too. So,
okay. And there's other questions about the fun topics, essays, right? So what's the timeline for student to start an application essay process? Is that senior year or summer of the senior year, especially on essays, right? Because we got to write lots and lots of essays. Yeah. What would be the ideal time frame?
Here's the challenge. We love to allow our kids to get a jump start in the school year before the summer before their senior year, which is great, except the Common App rolls over in August, as well as the other early August, right? Because they're still bringing in students that are going to start in college that fall. And so you take the risk of writing your essays the summer before your senior year, only to have the system roll over in August, and you find that a school has changed the essay. It is not that common that happens, but CU did it last year. CU went from one question of 500 words to 2 questions of 250. They kept one of them and then they added another. So it wasn't a huge deal, but at the end of the day, something can become more relevant in society that they want to talk about. And so even the Common App main questions last year dropped a question and added one. So they can change, but it is best. We always advise our students, start on your main essay at the beginning of the summer before you start your senior year, and then get as many of your supplementals as you can done before your senior year, because otherwise you're writing them at the same time you're taking your senior classes, trying to do senior festivities, and it's just really hard for the students to fit it all in.
Okay, thank you. So Common App is the first, the Common App essay is the first one to start with. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's their main essay that talks about who they are and what's important to them.
Mhm. So we talked about, college and parameters of the college like GPA, rigor, and everything. What are other parameters to consider for choosing a college, other than out of state or anything? How can we get more information about a college, right? How our students can trust if this college is really a good candidate for me to go either in state or out of state?
So one of the things that we always focus on, if a student's really enjoying something as far as an activity in high school, and that's where they found their people, and they want to continue doing that in college, that's a really big deal. Like Model UN, or some type of speech and debate, or even if it's a sport, if that's how they found their people before, we always really support them doing that. So that's a big way to really discern, other than academics, what would be a great fit. And also having that heart-to-heart conversation with your student. Can you see yourself in a large classroom setting? Because, by the way, some students like to put the baseball cap on and sit back, right? And they're happy with that and they're going to do great and they'll just go to office hours. But other students, and Kuth, that could be your daughter. Maybe she needs to be with somebody that she sees her professor. There's only 20 kids in the class, and that's her sweet spot. So I think it's important to really have that conversation. And of course, the academics. I mean, you should go to school for at least what in general you think, and you look at, and this, Mary and I, we're meanies, we make our students do this, go in, look at the classes offered. Do these classes excite you? Who's teaching this? What type of research is being done? Really drill in. And, instead of looking at the World Report, best, #1 engineering school, because that's overall, and many of those parameters have nothing to do with a student at all. So really looking at, activities, and then the, what was the other one? And the academics, school, like really hone in on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and teeing off of what Mary said too, is that we get a lot of parents that want a prestigious school or a well-named school or a US News and World Report. All those are good pieces of guidance, but what's really important, to Mary's point, is choosing the school that one is a good fit for them. And then it's where they're going to excel. They're going to get involved. And when a student is involved, they're not just doing academics, they're doing extracurriculars that will promote their career. I'm just going to say, I have a niece, she's at New Mexico State. That's frankly an in-state school for them, and the state pays for it. So they feel like, why should she go somewhere else? She's pre-med. She gets a lot of teacher support. She's been doing internships every summer at like Anschutz Medical Center and UNM Medical Center. She will be very well primed to go to med school. So you can choose a school like that you cherry pick the area and the teachers that you will get that level of support, and it can result in great results that usually only a top tier school will give you, right? So I just want to plug that there's a lot of ways to achieve our goals now that in the past, if you weren't from a top name school, it really cut you out of being competitive for certain jobs or certain opportunities. That's really not the case anymore. So I just think we have to be more open to all of these criteria.
Okay, sounds good. And our participant list here, it's kind of a mixed bag right now. So there are a lot of parents that whose kids are in middle school. So just for their sake of understanding, I think there's a question here on what's a common app. Is common app accepted by all colleges in USA, or are there any other apps that certain colleges want to consider other than the common app?
Mira, you want to answer that? Or
Yeah, I will. So there's two major applications, Common App and Coalition. Coalition's really taken a second tier to the Common App. So most of your state schools and universities are Common App. There's the UC application for the UC schools like UC Berkeley, UCLA, Santa Barbara, and that's its own separate app. Then there's some schools that only take their own application. We call them institutional apps, where you actually have to apply directly to the school. And then there's the European, like the UCAS system. So there's a lot of applications, but I would say, I think 60 to 70% of the schools are on Common App now. And so you can feel pretty rest assured that when you fill out the Common App, what it does is you fill out all this generic information that all the schools want to collect. And then within the Common App, there's many applications for each of the colleges and universities. So when you open them, then they ask you all their questions. But at least you're not going to every single university and filling out all that generic information, and it's encapsulated into one application for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and if families want to see it, you can just get on commonapp.org and make your own account and just check it out. You can get in there and play, because nothing's going to go anywhere unless you pay money, unless you're looking to apply to college, unless you pay with a credit card. But if you really want to get your eyes on it, commonapp.org. Why not? Check it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great idea.
That's a good piece of advice. We can just log in, create a free account, and at least have a feel of what's going to happen in high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think those are all the questions that I have right now. Participants, do you have any other questions? Oh, I just got one. So this question is, can you talk about merit scholarships? Do all colleges offer that to students? Is it based on GPA, ACT, and SAT score? So what's a merit scholarship?
Okay, I can take that one, Mayor. Merit scholarship is based on your students' GPA, Rigor, and sometimes test scores. Now it's a little different now because things are test optional. So it's based on their performance. So the reality is schools that are very selective, so Ivy League, Stanford, Georgetown, these are schools that offer no merit aid. So you're paying full price unless you actually qualify for federal financial aid. Because you can imagine all the students that are going there are the top creme de la creme. So there's no way to differentiate. Versus at CU, you have the top 20%, or even more get merit aid. And the stronger your student is, and the higher percentage, like the top tier they are in that particular school, the more merit aid they will get as well. And by the way, I think this is a good tip, you guys. Net price calculator. This is something that I think is really important for you guys you can basically, the federal government has mandated that every net price calculator, which tells you what you're going to pay for that specific college, has to be 2 clicks away. So we have it in the system that we use, but you can simply Google net price calculator for University of Oregon. And you put in adjusted gross income, test scores, GPA, how many kids you have in college. And there's probably more questions than that depending on the school. And it will give you what you will pay for that school. You'll see if your student will get merit aid. And it feels good to kind of know in general what you'll be paying for that school. So that's the net price calculator.
Your price calculator. Okay. And there was another follow-up question on that. The question is, can you briefly talk about FAFSA and any other financial aid process?
So I can take that one, Mary.
Yeah.
So FAFSA opens up October 1st. And what FAFSA is the ability to basically you sign in, your student creates a deck or creates an ID. Then on the 1st of October, you get in with your student and it auto-populates your tax returns and you put in schools that you're applying to, and it will tell you how much you can afford to pay for school. It's called estimated family contribution. The name may change this year, but it's still the same idea that they're telling you that you can spend, that you can afford. And by the way, if you fill it out, sometimes you'll be like, oh, I can pay $100,000 a year for college base. And don't be surprised that if you have a really solid income, it may come back with something like that. Not that you'll ever do that. So you're not going to get anything except for they will offer you student loans, subsidized or unsubsidized. Usually if you unsubsidized but if you actually have financial need, then you actually, they'll offer also subsidized. So there's something, and Kuth, you guys let us know if you want us to send you this information. They have the FAFSA calculator. We have something again on our own system, but it's called the FAFSA Lite, and it's a way to kind of to put in all your information to see, will I actually get any federal aid? It's good. It's just good to know. And then if you do great, if not, then you're like, all right, I probably don't even need to fill out the FAFSA. And FAFSA has to be filled out every single year, even after you get it the first year. Sophomore year, you have to keep filling it out. Did I answer the question completely? You
Yeah, you did.
Okay,
I didn't know that it has to be filled every year. So that's definitely a good piece of tips here. Thank you for that.
yeah,
And
you bet.
yeah, there is a related question about all the finances. Like, what's your recommendation to parents to start saving for college? Are there any options to start saving for the college or?
So we're not, wealth managers or anything, but 529 in Colorado is actually really, really fantastic. So we're very lucky that we live in a state that allows you to not only put it into one student's name, but then you can move it around very easily. And if you don't use it, you can use it for graduate school. It's a really, really great program. So I would take advantage of, Mary, what's the name of the 529?
No, I know it as the 529, and I would tell you.
But it's called College.
College Invest.
Yeah, what is it?
College
College
Invest.
Invest.
College Invest.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, but that's the one thing that we would do. Obviously, deferred compensation. So pre-tax, that's also another. If your company offers that, that's always a great way to not only create wealth, but you can also use that money later on if need be for college. We don't recommend, taking a second mortgage or anything like that. We don't think that's a great idea. But the big thing is just basically realizing that there's a lot of ways to pay for college, but making sure that college is a fit for your student and for your family's budget. It's a hard conversation to tell your student, hey, we can't, even if you get into Cornell, we can't pay $85,000 a year because we're not going to, it's just you have 2 or 3 other siblings, and students understand that. There's so many great schools. So those are the tough conversations.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You
And
bet.
I think the last bunch of questions related to IB, right? How
Mhm.
much does IB help to get into a college, either locally or international schools? Or IB just only focused on international schools? If so, how would I apply for that?
Yeah, I can take that one, Mary, if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
There's different levels of classes that students take, right? There's your regular level, advanced, honors, AP, IB, and it does go in that level. So, but not all schools offer IB. So you can't penalize students if they don't go to an IB school. And the highest thing that they have is AP in a certain amount. So let me say this, I'll talk about IB and then I'll talk about the schools that don't have it. So IB definitely helps your students get into the international schools where that is the entry criteria for what they're looking for. Mary and I have been helping some students recently get into the EU, the Europe system. And so the way their high school is it's almost like their kids go to a grade 13, which is comparable to what our kids would get if they did an IB program. And so even though Europe has taken the view of creating a foundation year for some of these colleges, because they're 3 years usually instead of 4 years bachelor's. So they've created an extra year for those students that don't have the IB or the foundation, because you're IB and then you're taking these AP tests and getting certain scores like a 5.55 or a 5.44. And if you don't go to an IB school and have like an IB certificate, then it is harder for you to get into those schools in Europe. And so then that's their basic level of application. But from a school that doesn't have an IB program that has AP, what the admissions officers look at is the counselor report or the school report and says, what is the highest level that the students can take in this school? How many AP classes are offered? How many AP classes did the student take? And that's how they calibrate a student's entry. But let's be honest, if you go to an IB school, you get your IB certificate and you have that level, then you are going to normally beat out students that don't have that level of rigor for those higher level colleges, right? Those more selective colleges. So that's really the hard part of it, is a lot of areas don't have. I mean, Centaurus just started their IB program not very long ago, when Fairview was the only one that had it in our area.
Mhm.
Yes.
So does the number of AP classes you take or the number of IB courses you take, does it matter at all? Like any student can be interested in just AP math or an equivalent of AP math and IB. So if they want to go to a math related or engineering related courses, so does the number always matter?
It doesn't. You mean as far as the course number, Kuth, or you mean
Yeah,
the
the
number?
number
the
of
amount.
AP. So if one student is genuinely interested in engineering and he or she is going to take only AP math, for instance, right? Or AP engineering, something like that. But the other student, he or she has taken like 10 different APs, right? So is that number of
Yeah.
AP courses or IB courses, does it matter for an admission decision?
So it depends on what you're applying into, right? So
Mhm.
I think I'm understanding the question, you guys. So all AP should be purposeful, should what the students is really interested in. There's so many talented students that are really good at math as well as writing. So they might be in the IB program and do higher level English and do higher level math for the IB program, or they might be able to do the AP Lang, AP Lit, as well as Calc 2-3, which a lot, I know Fairview offers that, Monarch offers that. So bottom line is, it's not really the amount, it's the amount that you can handle really well, because the proof is when you take those AP tests in May, if you can actually nail a really strong score of 4 or 5, they know that you can do college level work. That's absolutely the fact. So it's really making sure students prep for those, because that's where they can get credit, but also schools, selective schools love to see those tests taken, since they don't have the SAT subject tests anymore. Those have gone away.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. There's another question on this. Like after a student is enrolled into a college, do they have to really decide college major in the first year itself? Because some colleges do require their major to be declared, as we discussed earlier, right? So
Right.
what if a student is not able to identify or have the thought process of taking a major? Can they declare a major in second year or third year, something like that? Do colleges allow that kind of a process?
Neer, do you want to take that
Yeah,
one?
I'll take
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So it really just depends on the school, the university. There are some that are direct admit, like let's take Cal Poly as an example. you direct admit into the degree or the major that you want to study. And it is a little difficult to change degrees or major, especially into a harder major like the engineering program. So we've seen families say, well, how about if I just try to get in with like as a philosophy, but then I'll switch over to it. And I'm like, that's not a good plan, because they are very degree focused and they meet the needs of kids that really know what they want to study. So for instance, it's not just engineering, it's mechanical engineering.
Right.
And so their curriculum is pretty tight. They're teaching those classes to get those students through, and that meets certain students. So then Mary and I have students that really don't know what they want to study. And so many of them will go to a liberal arts school where they can take more time to decide, or they go to university where they don't have to declare. And normally though, by the end of your sophomore year, you're starting to gain momentum about what you want to do, because by your sophomore, junior year, you do want to decide, right? Because at that point, you're taking a lot of electives where they may not go towards your major, and then you're paying money for classes that probably you don't need. So yes, there's absolutely schools that can allow that type, and in fact, they promote that type of exploring and trying a bunch of different things. And then there's other colleges where they're like, nope, you're in and you're, on the train. And so it really depends on the school and the child.
Okay.
So you guys,
Yeah.
I don't know, Radha and Kuth, have you guys ever heard of schools called Colleges That Change Lives? This is a consortium of like 40 schools that have been hand selected, and it's basically they tour all over the country. There's a college fairs. These are phenomenal schools that provide great research. You have the ability, they're all liberal arts schools, by the way. And they create this amazing learning environment where there's great research, great relationships with professors. A lot of students that want to go to medical school go to these schools, Colleges That Change Lives, because they create this really great relationship. So if you guys look, it's called ctcl.com. So, or .edu, but it's CTC, but Colleges That
I know it's
Change Lives.
CTCL. They'll find it.
CTCL. And you can look at the profile of all of the universities. These are gems. These are amazing schools.
Yeah, as a jumping
Thank
point
you
for
so
that,
much.
Yeah, you bet.
liberal arts schools produce more presidents, produce more CEOs. So, I mean, there's a lot of goodness in what Mary's saying into really checking out some of these liberal arts. They create what we call critical thinking, right? They don't feel like it's the subject per se, but it's how you approach the subject and how you approach learning and how you approach mastery. And so we call it a gentler, kinder way, but it's definitely more challenging because this higher cognitive has to be on all the time, not just rote memory and learning.
Right. And that's definitely a good piece of information, because I've never heard about CTCL. I'm just gonna go and Google it right after this.
Yay!
Good.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you bet.
And so we've got only a few more minutes, and I saved these questions for the end, right? So this is like a three-part question. How does one engage with Discover? What services you guys offer, and what's your fee structure?
Sure. I can take that. So if you go to Discover Pathways, and we spell pathways differently, it's like the Waze app, because obviously it's PATHWAZE.com, because the other one, the more common, was taken. So we couldn't use that. But we pride ourselves in being very transparent in our fees. So if you guys go out onto our website, and like a lot of our competitors or peers, we promote that. We want to be very transparent of what we charge and what we do with all of our services. So we also love that we meet our students and parents where they need to be met. Some of our students have their list already created. They've got their 3/4 of the way through the process. So we don't want to take you through something you don't need. So we have a variety of things. We have a comprehensive package. We have pieces and parts of it where if you just need the self-discovery in what we call the career match, you can choose that and then come back to us later if you need some more. We have hourly support that we can provide if you just need help on a just-in-time basis. We feel very strongly that there's not enough of us out there to support all the families that need to be supported. So we want to just make sure that we give you guys what you need when you need it, and have a variety of services. And so there's a support link out there, and Mary or I are the people that answer it. Mary and I own the company, and we are counselors to the students and support our families. We're a very small organization. We have essay experts, so people that know how to read and review and understand what's the essays about. And then we have another counselor. So the other thing that you get with us is that Mary and I work, as you can tell, really closely together. And so we're constantly talking about our families and reading each other's emails and assignments and really going after what's the best thing for a family. We both have our specialties. So sometimes Mary will say, hey, I think you should take this student, or vice versa. And so we're, a really small team that we're pretty tight in that way.
Thank you so much for that information. I think we are coming to an end of this session. So Mary, that was definitely a wonderful, fantastic session indeed today. So we truly appreciate the time you both took to present this crucially important information to all our participants today. We have parents from elementary school, middle school, and high school, and also, like students going to senior school. So thank you again so much. And thanks for patiently answering all our questions. We had tons and tons of questions, and thanks for all the tips and nuances you both provided us today, like CTCL, right? And applying for FAFSA every single year. Those are some things definitely or my takeaways from this session. So thanks again for providing all those tricks and tips. And I want to also thank all the participants who attended today's session and for all the thought-provoking questions. Like, the chat was totally filled with numerous questions that it was really hard for me to keep track of those and group them logically, So
good job.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for all the participants. And finally, I'd like to thank our Tamil Association of Colorado and our President Radha Rangarajan and Vice President Chitra Saravanan for arranging this college prep event today. So like I said earlier, can be a better time than this because we are going to start the school, right, with our students. So thank you all again so much and have a good one. Good night, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.